What if the greatest spiritual power you could ever access didn't come from talent, education, or influence, but from a quiet decision made before sunrise? Every morning at 4 a.m., while the world slept, one man knelt in prayer. Not for a week, not for a season, but for over 40 years. His name was E.M. Bounds, and what happened as a result would later shake churches, awaken ministers, and redefine the power of prayer for generations. This is not a story about hype. It's a story about discipline. It's not about fame. It's about faithfulness in secret. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs spiritual fire reignited. Because what you're about to hear may challenge how you see prayer forever. Now, let's step into the dark, quiet hour where heaven began to move. It was still dark. No birds, no movement, no sound except silence pressing against the walls. While most of the world slept, a single man rose quietly from his bed. No alarm clock, no rushing, no complaint. Just a decision made again and again, day after day, year after year. 4 a.m. For over 40 years, this hour shaped the life of E.M. Bounds. Not fame, not applause, not influence, prayer. This is not a story about a man who occasionally prayed when life became difficult. This is the story of a man who structured his entire existence around communion with God. A man who believed heaven moved not by noise, but by kneeling souls. A man whose discipline would eventually shape generations he would never meet. And yet, E.M. Bounds did not start as a legend. He started as an ordinary man with an extraordinary conviction. Edward McKendry Bounds was born in Shelby County, Missouri, a frontier land still raw and unsettled. His upbringing was respectable, his intellect sharp, and his future promising. In fact, few would have predicted that prayer, not law, not politics, not public leadership, would define his legacy. Bounds originally trained as a lawyer. He was articulate, intelligent, well-respected, a rising professional with every reason to chase success as the world defined it. But something stirred beneath the surface, something that legal victories could not satisfy. Then the Civil War erupted. The nation fractured, families broke apart, blood stained the soil, and E.M. Bounds, like many men of his generation, found himself swept into chaos. He served as a chaplain in the Confederate Army, ministering to wounded soldiers and grieving families. It was here, amid suffering, loss, and death, that his theology deepened. When cannons roar, shallow faith collapses. Bounds saw men pray desperately in foxholes, only to forget God when danger passed. He saw churches filled with words, yet empty of power. And slowly, painfully, a conviction took root inside him. God does not move through polished sermons alone. God moves through prayed-through lives. After the war, Bounds entered pastoral ministry. He preached, he wrote, he led congregations. Outwardly, he looked like many other ministers of his day. But inwardly, he was unsettled. He noticed something deeply troubling. Sermons were becoming stronger, but churches were growing weaker. Activity increased, yet spiritual authority diminished. Programs multiplied, yet transformation was rare. Bounds asked a question few dared to ask. What if the problem wasn't God's willingness to act, but humanity's unwillingness to pray? That question haunted him, so he did something radical. He rearranged his life around the secret place. Every morning, long before sunrise, E.M. Bounds rose at 4 a.m., not because it was convenient, not because it was romantic, but because it was quiet, undistracted, sacred. Those early hours became his altar. While the world slept, he interceded. He prayed for holiness. He prayed for revival. He prayed for ministers by name. He prayed for nations he would never visit. He prayed until words failed and silence took over. Bounds believed prayer was not preparation for ministry. Prayer was the ministry. He once wrote, "The men who have done the most for God in this world have been early on their knees." That was not theory, it was autobiography. 4 a.m. was not symbolic, it was habitual, it was costly, and it was lonely. There were no social media posts announcing his discipline, no crowds applauding his consistency, no immediate results to validate his sacrifice. Just faith, just obedience, just persistence. Years passed, decades passed, and still Bounds rose before dawn. 40 years of mornings, thousands of hours spent unseen, an entire lifetime poured out in prayer before a God who rewards in secret. But here is the most shocking part. During his lifetime, E.M. Bounds was largely unknown. His books were not bestsellers. His name did not echo across conferences. He died in 1913 with little recognition and even less financial security. By worldly standards, his life looked quiet, almost insignificant. But heaven was paying attention, because something was happening in those early hours, something invisible yet unstoppable. Bounds was shaping the theology of prayer for generations to come. His private devotion was forging public impact he would never live to see. The words he wrote in obscurity would later ignite pastors, missionaries, and believers across the world. But none of that had happened yet. At this stage of the story, E.M. Bounds is still just a man kneeling in the dark, a man convinced that prayer moves the hand that moves the world, a man sowing seeds into eternity with no guarantee he would ever see the harvest. And that raises a haunting question for us today. What happens when a man refuses to quit praying, even when nothing seems to change? In the next section, we will step inside those 4 a.m. hours. We will uncover what E.M. Bounds believed about prayer that most believers overlook, and why he was convinced that prayerlessness, not sin, was the greatest threat to the church. And what he discovered there may shake your faith. As section 1 ended, we left E.M. Bounds kneeling in the dark, unknown, unseen, and unwavering. A man who believed heaven listened long before crowds ever did. But what exactly happened in those early hours? What did he see, learn, and experience that convinced him prayer was not optional, but essential? To understand that, we must step inside the secret place with him. Bounds did not view prayer as a religious habit. He viewed it as a spiritual battleground. To him, prayer was not soothing background music for faith. It was the engine that powered it. Without prayer, preaching became noise. Without prayer, ministry became machinery. Without prayer, Christianity became theory. And he was bold enough to say it. He wrote with startling clarity, "Prayer is not learned in a classroom, but in the closet." For Bounds, prayer was not refined by eloquence, but by endurance. Long hours, honest wrestling, waiting without answers, trusting without evidence. In those 4 a.m. hours, Bounds discovered something deeply uncomfortable for modern believers. Prayer does not primarily change circumstances, it changes people. It reshapes motives, exposes pride, and strips away self-reliance. That is why many avoid it. Prayer is work. Bounds often warned that the greatest enemy of prayer is not sin, but busyness. He saw ministers rushing from meeting to meeting, sermon to sermon, activity to activity, yet starving their inner life. The result? Churches full of motion, but empty of power. He believed heaven was not impressed by religious performance. Heaven responded to desperation. In the secret place, Bounds learned to linger. He did not rush through requests. He waited, sometimes in silence, sometimes in tears, sometimes with nothing left to say. He believed unanswered prayer was not a denial, it was an invitation to deeper trust. And here is where his theology became dangerous. Bounds argued that God deliberately binds his work to prayer, not because God is weak, but because he desires partnership. God could act alone, but he chooses to act through praying people. That meant prayerlessness had consequences, not just personally, but globally. Bounds believed revivals were born in prayer long before they erupted in public. He studied history obsessively, the Great Awakenings, the missionary movements, the spiritual renewals that reshaped nations, and he noticed a pattern so consistent it could not be ignored. Before every move of God, there was a small group of people praying intensely, persistently, and privately. Revival did not begin on platforms, it began on knees. This realization weighed heavily on him. Bounds did not merely critique the church, he mourned for it. He believed many believers had replaced dependence on God with dependence on methods. Strategy had replaced supplication, confidence had replaced humility, and prayer had been reduced to ceremony. In his writings, Bounds warned that the church's greatest danger was becoming prayerless while remaining active. He believed Satan feared nothing more than a praying believer, and nothing less than a prayerless church. So he prayed more, not out of guilt, not out of obligation, but out of understanding. Those early hours became a forge. His thoughts sharpened, his spirit softened, his dependence deepened. Prayer stripped him of self-trust and anchored him in God-trust. Yet prayer was not always comforting. There were mornings when heaven felt silent, when faith felt thin, when discipline was the only thing holding him in place. But Bounds remained convinced. Prayer was not validated by feeling, it was validated by faithfulness. And slowly, something changed. Not in headlines, not in applause, but in authority. Bounds' words began to carry weight. His sermons cut deeper. His counsel reached further. People sensed something different, not charisma, but conviction, not excitement, but substance. Prayer had shaped him into a man heaven could trust, and still, most of the world remained unaware, which leads us to a critical turning point. If prayer shaped E.M. Bounds so profoundly, why did recognition come so late? Why did his influence explode only after his death? And what does that tell us about how God measures success? In the next section, we will confront the uncomfortable reality of obscurity and discover why God often hides his most powerful servants before revealing their impact to the world. As we move forward from the secret place, we encounter a paradox that defines E.M. Bounds' life. The deeper his prayer life became, the quieter his public recognition grew. Bounds lived in near obscurity. He pastored small congregations. He faced financial hardship. He buried loved ones. He battled illness. There were no grand stages waiting for him, no crowds chanting his name, no visible rewards for his faithfulness. And yet, he did not stop praying. This is where many would quit. Bounds believed obscurity was not punishment, it was protection. He believed God often hides his servants until pride can no longer survive. Power without humility, he warned, destroys its carrier. He once wrote that God's greatest work is often done in those the world ignores. To Bounds, obscurity was a classroom. It trained endurance, it purified motive, it forced reliance on God alone. Prayer kept him there. While others pursued influence, Bounds pursued intimacy. While others measured success by numbers, Bounds measured it by faithfulness. He believed God valued depth over display, but the cost was real. Bounds struggled financially for much of his life. He relied on friends for support. His writings were largely unpublished during his lifetime. Many days, his obedience felt unrewarded. Yet he continued rising at 4 a.m. not because results demanded it, but because God deserved it. Bounds believed the greatest tragedy was not unanswered prayer, but unoffered prayer. He feared standing before God knowing he had withheld intimacy for comfort. And then, after decades of faithfulness, E.M. Bounds died. Quietly. No revival explosion, no global recognition, no earthly affirmation. But heaven was not finished. In the years following his death, his manuscripts were discovered, his writings were published, and something extraordinary happened. The church began to listen. Pastors, missionaries, revivalists, intercessors, all found themselves undone by his words. Bounds' books on prayer spread across denominations and continents. His theology pierced complacency. His emphasis on prayer ignited fresh hunger for God. The man the world ignored became a voice the church could not silence. And this raises a haunting truth. God is not in a hurry. Bounds' influence grew not because he chased relevance, but because he cultivated depth. His prayers outlived him. His obedience outlasted him. His intimacy echoed beyond his lifetime. Which leads us to the most personal question of all. What happens when prayer becomes not just a habit, but a lifestyle? In the next section, we will explore how Bounds' prayer life reshaped his understanding of ministry, suffering, and spiritual authority, and what it means for believers today. By now, one truth is undeniable. Prayer was not something E.M. Bounds did, it was who he was. Prayer shaped his schedule. Prayer shaped his priorities. Prayer shaped his theology. Bounds rejected the idea that prayer was reserved for emergencies. He believed prayer was oxygen. Remove it, and faith suffocates. He argued that many believers treat prayer as a last resort rather than a first response. Bounds called this spiritual malpractice. To him, prayerlessness was not neutral, it was dangerous. Prayer, he taught, produces spiritual authority, not volume, not charisma. Authority comes from time spent with God. It cannot be borrowed or faked. Bounds believed prayer aligned the human will with God's will. It did not force God to comply. It prepared the believer to cooperate. Through prayer, believers became vessels rather than directors. This changed how he viewed suffering. Bounds did not see hardship as a sign of failure. He saw it as an invitation to deeper dependence. Prayer did not remove pain, but it redeemed it. Through prayer, suffering refined rather than destroyed. His mornings with God anchored him when circumstances wavered. And here is the uncomfortable truth Bounds insisted on. Prayer costs something. Sleep, comfort, convenience, ego. But what it gives is incomparable. Clarity, power, peace, endurance. Bounds believed revival begins when prayer becomes more important than preference, when believers hunger for God more than entertainment, when intimacy replaces routine. And that brings us to the final question. If E.M. Bounds' life proves prayer changes everything, what are we supposed to do with that truth? In the final section, we will confront the legacy of his 4 a.m. discipline and the challenge it places before every believer watching this video. As we arrive at the end of this journey, the life of E.M. Bounds stands before us not as a relic of history, but as a living challenge. His story does not whisper, it confronts. After 40 years of rising at 4 a.m., after thousands of unseen hours poured out before God, after a lifetime marked more by prayer than applause, one unavoidable question remains. What are we going to do with this? E.M. Bounds did not intend to inspire admiration. He intended to provoke transformation. His writings were not designed to make readers feel spiritual. They were meant to make them pray. And that is why his legacy still unsettles the modern church. Bounds understood something many believers resist. Prayer is not convenient. It will interfere with comfort. It will disrupt routines. It will expose misplaced priorities. And that is precisely why it is powerful. He never called prayer easy. He called it essential. Bounds believed that every believer must decide whether prayer will be central or peripheral. There is no neutral position. A prayerless life, he argued, slowly erodes spiritual sensitivity. Faith becomes theoretical, worship becomes mechanical, obedience becomes selective. Prayer, on the other hand, recalibrates everything. It reorders desire, it sharpens discernment, it humbles ambition. Bounds warned that the greatest danger facing believers was not persecution or cultural opposition, but prayerlessness masked by activity. Churches could be full, sermons polished, music excellent, and yet spiritual authority absent. Why? Because power is not produced on platforms, it is cultivated in secret. The 4 a.m. discipline of E.M. Bounds was never about time on a clock. It was about intentionality. It was about carving out space where God was not competing with noise, notifications, or expectations. Bounds believed God often speaks softly, and only the still are able to hear him. And here is the uncomfortable part. Bounds believed God is always willing to act, but often waiting for someone to pray. Not because God is limited, but because he chooses partnership. He binds his work to praying people. That means prayerlessness has consequences not just for individuals, but for families, churches, and nations. This truth weighed heavily on him. Bounds believed revival does not begin with crowds crying out. It begins with individuals kneeling down. History confirmed it, Scripture affirmed it, and his own life embodied it. Which brings the challenge home. We live in a generation saturated with content, but starving for depth. Information is everywhere, yet intimacy with God is increasingly rare. We scroll endlessly, but pray briefly. We plan thoroughly, but intercede sparingly. Bounds would call this imbalance dangerous. He would remind us that prayer is not preparation for ministry, it is the ministry. That before God entrusts public influence, he looks for private faithfulness. Before he releases power, he tests persistence. And that testing often happens in silence. Bounds' prayers were not fueled by instant results. Many of the things he prayed for, revival, awakening, reformation, he never saw fulfilled in his lifetime. Yet he prayed anyway. He understood something eternal. Obedience is not validated by visible success. It is validated by faithfulness. This is perhaps the hardest lesson of all. Prayer does not always produce immediate change, but it always produces internal transformation. It aligns the heart with heaven. It reshapes perspective. It anchors hope beyond circumstances. Bounds believed that a praying believer becomes dangerous, not to people, but to darkness. Prayer disturbs complacency. It confronts apathy. It awakens spiritual hunger. And that is why the enemy fears it. Not loud prayers, not public prayers, but persistent, private ones. The kind prayed when no one is watching. The kind prayed when answers delay. The kind prayed when discipline replaces emotion. This is the legacy E.M. Bounds leaves us. Not a formula, not a schedule, but a way of life. He does not ask us all to wake at 4 a.m., but he does ask us to take prayer seriously, to stop treating it as an accessory rather than a necessity, to stop outsourcing our spiritual life to sermons, podcasts, and conferences. Bounds would tell us plainly, borrowed fire never sustains personal faith. Only time with God does. As this story closes, the question is no longer about E.M. Bounds. It is about us. What would change if prayer became our priority instead of our backup plan? What would shift if we carved out sacred time instead of leftover moments? What kind of spiritual authority might emerge if we sought God in secret before seeking results in public? Bounds' life suggests the sobering possibility. Heaven may be waiting not on better strategies, but on deeper prayers. And perhaps even now, in the quiet moments others overlook, God is still looking for men and women willing to rise early, kneel low, and stay faithful. Because when someone does, heaven still moves, and the world still feels it. E.M. Bounds' life reminds us that the deepest spiritual power is often hidden in the quietest hours. 40 years of waking at 4 a.m., countless prayers offered in secrecy, and a steadfast commitment to faithfulness. This was a man who understood that true revival begins in the secret place, long before the world notices. His life challenges us to examine our own prayer habits, our devotion, and our willingness to persist when no one is watching. Before you go, take a moment to reflect and share your thoughts in the comments. How consistent is your personal prayer life? What prevents you from praying regularly? Could you dedicate even 1 hour each day to God? How do you respond when prayers seem unanswered? What would change if you prayed before acting? Are you seeking intimacy or activity in your faith? How can you rise above distractions and stay faithful? I believe this story inspired you, so like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to be stirred into action. Heaven listens, and it starts with your next prayer. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.